Betty doesn't feel well today. There's a school nurse in Betty's school. The teacher thinks that Betty should go and see the nurse. The nurse looks at Betty very carefully. She sees some red spots. Could it be the measles? The nurse thinks, so she arranges to send Betty home right away. Dr. Fuller comes to see Betty at home, and sure enough, he says that she does have the measles. Dr. Fuller explains to Betty that she will have to stay in bed until she gets well. The doctor makes out a report saying that Betty has the measles. He will send this report to the Department of Health. Dr. McNally is the health officer in Betty's town. He is in charge of the Department of Health. His staff collects reports of all diseases which can be spread from one person to another. These diseases are called contagious. The health officer wants everyone with a contagious disease to be in isolation. Isolation means that the sick person will not be allowed to go where she might spread her disease to anyone else. Dr. McNally and the other men and women at the Department of Health work closely with the family doctors in Betty's town to find and isolate cases of disease. But more important, they fight to stop disease before it can start. One way they do this is by making sure that everyone gets vaccinated. A vaccination can protect you from a disease, something like a heavy coat protects you from the cold. The Department of Health laboratory in Betty's town plays a very important part in the fight against disease. Here, tests are made and studied. Each dark spot is a colony of germs. If nothing is done to stop the spread of germs, they can make thousands of people sick. The Department of Health fights in many ways to keep germs from spreading through the town. The milk you drink must be fresh and free from harmful germs. At the local dairies, inspectors from the Department of Health take samples of milk. These samples are tested in the laboratory to make sure that they are free from germs which might be dangerous to you. How about water? After all, everyone drinks water. Well then, isn't it important for that water to be safe and good to drink? It certainly is. Technicians at the Department of Health test many samples of water every day to make sure that they are pure and free from germs. This careful testing protects you every time you take a drink of water. How do you know that food in restaurants is good and safe to eat? Health inspectors carefully examine all the restaurants in town. They make certain that food is prepared and served here with the same care and cleanliness as it would be in your kitchen at home. You can be certain that a restaurant inspected by the Department of Health is a safe place to eat. Here is another way that disease germs can be spread. Millions of germs can live and grow in waste like this. When people are careless with waste, it's easy for disease to spread. The Department of Health fights this kind of carelessness and teaches care like this. Making certain that garbage and other waste materials are disposed of properly is an important way in which the Department of Health fights germs and disease. Protecting the health of an entire town requires the work of many people. Volunteer workers in your town may arrange meetings where parents with young children can talk with the town doctors. Here, a mother can see how her child is growing and learn the best ways to keep him healthy. If you are handicapped, you might find that your town has special classes for handicapped children. The town may arrange for chest x-rays, which can detect diseases whose symptoms are hidden to view. The x-ray takes only a few seconds, but it can help to discover certain diseases in their early stages when they are easier to cure. Your town may also provide visiting nurses who go out to homes where people need care for injuries or illness. This is routine. When an emergency strikes, the Department of Health is ready for it. A case of typhoid fever, an uncommon and dangerous disease, is reported. Soon, another case of the same disease is discovered. The next day, a third case is reported. If this disease is not stopped quickly, it can spread through the town, causing suffering and death. Homes where the disease has broken out are put under quarantine. When a house is under quarantine, only doctors and nurses are allowed to go in and out. Three cases of typhoid fever. The Department of Health must find out how the disease is spreading and stop the spread. Like detectives searching for clues, they ask questions. Where does your husband work? What restaurants does he eat in? Has there been any trouble with the plumbing in your home? Where do you buy your groceries? Do you know either of the other two sick people? Do you go swimming in a pool? Samples of water are taken from the homes of the sick people. The samples are tested to see if sewage has gotten into the water. More tests are made. And more questions are asked. Do you work out in a gym? Do you have any friends who live on Oak Street? Have you taken a drink from a stream? The answers to hundreds of questions and tests are put together and compared. And finally, 3 answers are found that match. All 3 of the sick people ate in the same restaurant the week before they became ill. The men and women who work at the restaurant are given complete physical examinations and are thoroughly questioned. The restaurant itself is inspected to the last detail. Questions and tests. And finally, the answer is found. This man recently quit working as a dishwasher in the restaurant. The results of a thorough examination show that he carries the germs of the disease in his body, even though he isn't sick himself. The germs traveled from his body to his hands, and from them to the dishes he washed. Now that the person who carries the germs has been discovered, he can be treated. And the spread of the disease is stopped. Betty is feeling much better. Dr. Fuller examines her and finds that she no longer has the measles. The doctor writes a note to Betty's teacher saying that Betty is cured of the measles and that she can go back to school. What can you do to help fight the spread of disease in your town? First, keep yourself healthy. Follow all the rules of good health. Second, don't be careless. Be careful about germs. Third, help keep your house and your town clean. Don't let germs breed where you live. And finally, when you are sick, stay at home in bed. You'll get well more quickly, and you won't spread your germs to others. In Betty's town and yours, there are fighters, men and women who fight to keep your town a safe and happy place to live. There are the policemen who fight crime and protect you in traffic. And there are the firemen who ride the engines to fight fires. But she is a fighter too. And so is he. And so is she. All the people in the Department of Health are fighters too. Fighters against disease and death. In the fight to keep your town a happy and a healthy place to live.
Hello, everybody. I'm Skip Alsheimer. Welcome to our AV Geeks Lunchtime streaming show. I am live today. Live. I was not live yesterday as I was being the good son and helping my parents get ready for a yard sale this weekend. And quick public service announcement. Help your parents get rid of all their stuff when they downsize. Just do it, because there's so much crap. Oh my God. So much stuff that's just like, and there was just like, well, how much is it selling for on eBay? It's like, no, that's not what this is about. This is about just clearing the stuff out, not how much you can make on eBay. So I had to be the person that say like, nope. They're like, what about $20? I'm like, how about $5? So hopefully somebody will do that. I don't have children, but hopefully some young person will help my wife and I. My wife is a personal organizer, so she will be the one that's actually doing that prior to me becoming feeble. Anyways, we watch old educational films, and as it happens, we watch a film that completely relates to what we're going through. Completely. Public health. Public health. It's important, man. It's important. That's all I got to say. I think that I won't even talk about it. You guys know. You guys get it. But public health is pretty important, and I think that we had generations that benefited from public health being enforced, and they forgot. They didn't know what public health did for them regarding safe water, safe food, etc. All right, that's enough of my soapboxing. You didn't tune in to watch this. All right. So next film is about the metric system. This time we're going to learn about centimeters, meters, and kilometers or kilometers, depending on where you're from. So let's enjoy.
hard to believe, but this is how all that measuring business began.
What are you doing? Measuring you. Oh.
By the time they got to me, I'm their uncle, they were measuring things a lot bigger than parts of a face. This is how they started. But I don't know why they started.
Do you believe I'm going to surprise you with a gift? A gift? You wouldn't get me a gift. You're right. I'm not getting you a gift. I thought so. You're just playing with that, aren't you? Yes. Can I look at it? Sure. What are those marks? Centimeters.
That's how he learned that a centimeter is a unit of length.
What? Here, I'll show you. Let's measure your finger. It's about 1 centimeter thick. How long is it? About 6 centimeters. See? Now let's measure your span. Span? Try stretching your fingers like this. See how far you can reach. Not quite as wide as mine.
Yep, that's when he learned to measure the span.
You measure. Not like that. You've got to put one end even with one side. That's the 0 point on the scale. Then you count up. 10, 15, 16, 17. 17 centimeters. I've got a span of 17 centimeters. Right. Now you can use your hand to measure other things. Like what?
What are you kids doing?
We want to measure your racket.
You want to measure what?
We want to measure your racket.
Well, okay.
It's about 2 fingers thick, about 2 centimeters. Or we can measure the face of the racket. How? One span, that's 17 centimeters, plus about another finger length, that's 6 centimeters, about 23 centimeters wide.
Can I have my racket back now, please?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
So they started small with fingers and the span of a hand, but then they went on to bigger things.
Hey, what about my arm? How long is my arm? Let's see. Well, the ruler's 30 centimeters. So starting from the tip of your finger, that's 30. Plus 30 more, that's 60. So your arm is 60 centimeters long. Can I measure something with my arm? Can we measure that?
The arrow?
Uh-huh.
Sure, go ahead.
Hold the tip of the arrow even with the tip of your hand. The arrow is a little longer than your arm. Well, my arm is 60 centimeters. Well, the arrow's a little longer. It's about 70 centimeters. Uh-huh. Thanks for letting us use your arrow.
You're welcome.
So you can see they were measuring bigger and bigger things, using fingers and using arms. And it didn't stop there.
Hey, what about my height? Can we measure how tall I am? Okay, stand straight. You know, the ruler's awfully short.
How they did it, I'll never know. But
What's that? A meter stick. It's marked in centimeters the same as a ruler. But instead of only being 30 centimeters long, it's 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 99, 100 centimeters. What does that mean? That means that 100 centimeters is equal to a meter. It says the same thing here. Uh-huh.
and that's how he learned that a meter is another unit of length.
So how tall am I? Let's find out. One meter plus about another 40 centimeters, about 140 centimeters high. Can I measure something with my height? Let's try.
Good morning. What are you kids doing today?
We want to measure the pony, can we?
Well, you certainly may. What are you going to measure them with, your hands?
Sort of. Can we?
Certainly. Go right ahead.
So that's how they measured how tall the pony was up to its shoulders.
She's about as tall as you are. And you're about 140 centimeters. So she must be about 140 centimeters. That's pretty tall.
Well, not really. It's about average for a pony.
It is?
Yes.
Well, thanks for letting us measure her.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yes, they were measuring bigger and bigger things.
I know something else we can measure. What? My step. How long is my step? Let's find out. Start with your foot next to the 0 point. 1, 2. 2 steps per meter. Try it again. 1, 2. Every time you take 2 steps, you've gone a meter. Can I measure something with my step?
Now that they knew that 2 of his steps were a meter, they could measure distances by just counting steps. How long was the jump?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 steps, or 5 meters. A pretty good jump.
Come on, kids, get out of there. We're trying to jump.
Okay, we're just leaving.
Well, that's how they measured a short distance. But you can be sure they didn't stop with a short distance.
What if you want to measure a really long distance, like thousands of meters?
And that's how he learned that a kilometer is 1,000 meters. Now they were really getting up into long distances. So they figured out how to measure 1 kilometer.
You have to count off 1,000 double stacks. Let's do it. Okay, you count. Okay. 1 and 2 and 3. $9.99, 1,000.
And that's how they measured 1 kilometer.
Sure is a long way when you're walking. What about when you're riding, like on a bike?
And that's when he found out that bikers can go about 30 kilometers an hour. That's about 1 kilometer every 2 minutes.
How fast do cars go?
And that's when he found out that cars and trucks can go about 80 kilometers an hour.
How fast do airplanes go?
That's when he found out that passenger jets can go about 1,000 kilometers an hour.
Wow.
And now we're coming to my part of the story. The two of them got to the little airport where I work.
I wonder how fast these planes go. I wonder how long they are.
Finally, that's me on the right. I saw them walk to the gate, and I saw them walk through the gate and come right out onto the field. Well, people just can't do that, even my relatives. So I said to them, "Hey, where do you kids think you're going?"
We've come to measure the plane.
"You're what?"
We've come to measure the plane.
And that's when they explained that they started with centimeters and measured a finger, and used some fingers to measure a racket, and used an arm to measure an arrow. And then they got to meters, and used a meter stick to help them measure many things. A person's height, a pony's height, the length of a step, the distance of a jump, and finally they got to the kilometer. And now they wanted to measure the airplanes at my field. I couldn't believe it. "You're what?"
We've come to measure the plane.
They can measure fingers and rackets and arms and arrows and ponies and steps and jumps, but not planes. Not on my airfield.
Gee, how are we supposed to learn if no one will let us do things?
Oh, metric system. Oh, how I wish we would just had transitioned over. I mean, think about how easy life would have been not having to explain that there's 12 inches in a foot and there's 3 feet in a yard, and how many feet are in a mile. Oh, just imagine all the stuff that we could be working on and doing and obsessing about instead of weird legacy measurement systems. Oh my gosh. Anyways, it's something I dream for, something I dream about. Maybe one day it will happen before I die. I'm hoping. So many dreams, so many things to wish for. This next film is, I have films that are physical education films, and at some point it was physical education for boys or for girls. Like boys did this, girls did this. So volleyball for girls. I just scanned some raw camera original footage, archery for girls. Not archery for boys, just archery for girls. So, that was a thing. Whereas now it's like, want to play soccer? Guys, girls? Sure, let's do it. Anyways, this is balance beam for girls.
To perform on the balance beam, one must develop balance, body control, grace, and creativity. The beam is 4 inches wide and 16 feet long. Balance beam exercises begin with a mount. This is a front support mount. Using a straight arm support and a straddle, we have a straddle mount. To straddle mount on the end of the beam, one needs both arm strength and body control. The body is lifted. The hips are held high, and the legs are in a straddle. As the body rotates, preparation is made for the hand change. A closer view of the mount reveals the balanced grip of the hands. The body turns, and the hands change position. Here we see a side step-up mount. Approach the beam from an angle. Swing the inside leg forward and up on the beam. Now follow with the outside leg. The end position is a squat. This is the step-up mount on the end of the beam. Begin with a running approach. Take off of the floor or router board with 1 foot, spring vertically, and step onto the end of the beam. Locomotive moves such as walks, runs, skips, hops, and jumps are used on the beam throughout the routines. The plie or dip walk tests the balance of the gymnast. While practicing such moves, the gymnast can concentrate on arm work and body carriage. The arms should be soft and expressive throughout the balance beam routine. Jumps on the beam offer the gymnast a challenge in skills and add to a variety of moves. The gymnast should combine moves and continually work toward smooth transitions. Floor skills, such as scales, should be learned on the floor and later transferred to the beam. It is helpful to practice tumbling skills on the floor until perfect before trying them on the beam. The forward roll. Grasp the beam, tuck the head, and slowly roll forward. Keep the elbows close to the ears. Spotters are important to the gymnast practicing a new stunt. Lying on the back, grasp the beam overhead. Lift the hips and legs overhead and place the leg on the beam. Here, with the aid of the spotter, the gymnast goes into a knee scale as a finish to a back roll. A back roll to a knee scale. Inverted stunts, such as the cartwheel, should be learned with the aid of a spotter. In executing a cartwheel, the spotter can best help the gymnast with support at the waist. The gymnast executes the cartwheel concentrating on watching the beam and stretching out to all points. Push out from the center of the body. Here, the spotter assists with a handstand rollout. The spotter assists the gymnast at the waist. She kicks up to a handstand, tucks her head, bends her elbows, and lowers her body with control. The handstand rollout is completed. The back walkover requires courage and confidence. Assisted at the waist, the gymnast kicks into the walkover. The gymnast must watch the beam throughout the entire move. The kick must be strong and from the hip. We now see the stunt unassisted. Splits are an asset in creating a beam routine. Here we see them followed by a V-sit position. Getting off of the beam is called a dismount. Here we see a jump dismount. The gymnast should jump higher than the beam, outstretch the legs, and land with slightly bent knees to absorb the force. The round-off dismount. Do the round-off close to the end of the beam. The routine should flow smoothly and have variety. It is started with a mount and ends with a dismount. A router board can be used for the mount, but must be removed discreetly so as not to disturb the performer. Dance and floor skills are important in beam work. They are used as transitional moves and often keep the routine moving. In a balanced beam routine, the gymnast has 1 minute and 20 seconds to 1 minute and 45 seconds to present a combination of moves. The routine should flow smoothly and have variety. Again, all stunts and moves used on the beam should be learned on the floor first. With practice for balance and control, the gymnast can accomplish a full routine, projecting skill, grace, and beauty.
So I looked it up, and it doesn't seem to be a really compelling reason why men cannot use the balance beam. Some people think it's the physiology that one's genitals could be damaged if a man takes a wrong step. But I don't buy that argument at all, especially considering that men's bikes have a bar that can do considerable damage and have done considerable damage. I'm not hoping to overshare here, but I have spent tens of thousands of dollars correcting a bike accident. That's all I'm going to say. Maybe when we're through this, I'll buy me a beer and I'll tell you the story. It's tragic. But where am I going? Sorry. Anyways, yeah, like I looked it up, and there's some men that have done balance beam stuff, but it really hasn't caught on as a competition, and some of these gender things. So next generation that happen to be watching, it's up to you. It's up to you to make balance beams acceptable for men. It could be men that are just not strong enough to do it, because balance beams seem really hard. All right, what do we got here? This next film, it's by the Virginia Education Department. They had an active film board that made lots of educational films. North Carolina didn't really have that. They had it for a while with the North Carolina Film Board, but that was disbanded in the 60s. So there's just a handful of films they made, whereas Virginia made a bunch, which I ended up with many of them in their original materials. So this is Virginia's capital, I think. All right, here we go. Let's enjoy.
This is Virginia's capital, one of the most beautiful of the 48 capitals in the United States history. When Virginia was still a British colony, its capital was located at Jamestown, the first permanent English settlement in America. Late capital was moved to Williamsburg. It was here that leaders like Patrick Henry, Thomas Jefferson, and George Mason spoke out against British rule. And finally, the capital was moved to Richmond. Adjoining Richmond's business section is Capitol Square, the beautiful grounds surrounding Virginia's state capital. The handsome iron fence around the square was put up to keep cattle out of the grounds. Cattle in Richmond's early days wandered freely, grazing in the city streets. In a corner of the square is historic Bell Tower. Years ago, its bell was always rung to announce important national events. And today the bell is rung whenever the General Assembly is in session. The General Assembly of Virginia is composed of two bodies and meets in regular session every other year. The State Senate, a body of 40 members, convenes in the Capitol's West Wing. And the House of Delegates, with 100 members, convenes in the Capitol's East Wing. The Capitol building was planned by Thomas Jefferson along the lines of a plaster model of the Maison Carrée, an old Roman temple he had admired in France when he was a minister to that country. Note how closely the building resembles the model. The middle portion, with its large white portico, is the original part of the Capitol, which was occupied in 1788. It was in this building that Robert E. Lee accepted the command of the armed forces of Virginia in the war between the states. And it was here that the Confederate Congress met from 1861 until the Confederacy fell. At this time, the Capitol served a dual purpose. It was the capital of Virginia,
as well as the capital of the Confederate States of America. The wings at each side of the columned portico were put on much later, about 1905, when the original building became too small to hold all the men needed to govern the growing state of Virginia. Inside the building is the famous statue of George Washington by the French sculptor Houdon. This is the only statue in America that was made with Washington himself as model. Outside in the grounds is another monument to Washington. When this bronze statue reached Richmond by boat 100 years ago, hundreds of men and boys patriotically hauled it up the hill from the river to the square. And on Washington's birthday, it was unveiled in a great ceremony. A few years later, beneath the statue, Jefferson Davis was inaugurated President of the Confederacy. Around Washington are other famous Virginians. Thomas Jefferson, author of the Declaration of Independence, second governor of Virginia after the Revolution, and third President of the United States. George Mason, who wrote the Virginia Bill of Rights, the first Declaration of Rights in America. General Thomas Nelson, signer of the Declaration of Independence and the fourth governor of Virginia after the Revolution. John Marshall, a great Chief Justice who headed the United States Supreme Court for 34 years. General Andrew Lewis, Indian fighter and revolutionary leader. And Patrick Henry, whose liberty or death speech did so much to bring about our independence. From the monument, one can see the governor's mansion, which has been the home of Virginia's governors since its completion in 1813. Everywhere in the square are monuments to Virginia's great. This one to her famous Confederate General, Stonewall Jackson. The statue was a gift to Virginia from the General's admirers in England. And near Jackson is Dr. Hunter Holmes McGuire, who founded the University College of Medicine, now the Medical College of Virginia. Nearby is the monument to William Smith, one of Virginia's two governors during the Confederacy and a general in the Confederate Army. Surrounding the square are many state buildings. This building houses both the Supreme Court of Virginia and the Virginia State Library. The Finance Building houses some of the state's fiscal agencies. At the lower end of Capitol Square stands the State Office Building, and adjoining it, the new Blanton Building. These two buildings house many of the administrative departments of the state government. Virginia's capital is visited by people from all over the country and is the subject of many field trips. On important occasions, the Capitol building is graced with flags. Crowds line the approaches to the square, and the air is alive with the sounds of celebration. As the seasons of the year change, the Capitol's appearance changes with them. But whatever the season of the year, Capitol Square retains its beauty and its dignity. And this is fitting, for with its many state buildings, with its statues of famous Virginians and its legislative halls, the Capitol stands as a symbol of state government to Virginians everywhere.
All right, I'm sorry I showed that film. Again, man, it's getting to where I can't show certain films that they are hot button issues regarding statues of Confederate generals. I would say this, in Richmond, even though some of those statues are down, visit the Museum of the Confederacy. It is a wonderful place that honors and also puts things in context about what was going on. Really, it's pretty good. It's not just a statue on Monument Avenue. It is it's a place that you can see and learn and read. So there you go. That's why I'm just going to leave it at that. But I apologize. Sometimes that stuff kind of pops up, and I'm like, oh, I have friends who live in Richmond, and actually I have friends who live near the Hollywood Cemetery, where there's three presidents there, two American presidents, and the president of the Confederacy. They're all buried there. So you can go from my friend's house and just walk down, and you can look at presidents' graves. There you go. All right. This next film means a lot to me. Because it is one of those things that added up into where I'm at and why I'm at who I am. Long time ago, I used to watch a lot of Saturday Night Live, and this was 7th and 8th grade, and all throughout high school. And during the summer, they would take a break, and they would sometimes rerun episodes, or sometimes they would show new things. And one of the new things that they showed was this I think it was 2 or 3 episode thing called Twilight Theater. I think that's what it was called. And it was hosted by Steve Martin, who I absolutely loved at the time. And it would have these comedy skits, but it also had these crazy things I had never seen before. And there were 3 of them that totally influenced me and have put me on a trajectory. First one it was the first time I had ever seen Pee Wee Herman before. There was a little Pee Wee Herman skit that was on there. The second was this weird animated film that I kept seeing again and again at different places in different segments, which was called Quasi at the Quackadero, which is one of my favorite films of all time. Animated film. And later I found out the woman who did it actually went to school, prep school here in Raleigh at St. Mary's. And I later befriended her and did a retrospect of her films at the Anthology Film Archives in New York City. And I've gotten some of her films. Anyways, but the third thing was a music video by Devo. And it wasn't Whip It, but it was It's a Beautiful World. And what was interesting about that was it's made up of stock footage. Lots and lots and lots of stock footage. And it really instilled a sense of irony, talking about a beautiful world, et cetera, et cetera. And it did plant in my head this idea about, wow, stock footage can be used to show us how we were, and it can talk about hypocrisies, it can talk about all these things. And years later, I started collecting films. And I started collecting and doing things with the films, and I had a film transfer machine. And at some point, I got contacted by Chuck Statler, who directed, along with, I think, Jerry Casale from Devo, directed the Beautiful World video and directed many of the other Devo videos. And he was looking for footage for a documentary he was doing about Muzak and elevator music. And so he actually sent me some stuff that he had shot for Devo that I transferred, and it was beautiful. And I got a little weepy when I saw the Beautiful World video again, because it was clear emotionally how it was related. So this next film is a film that I have in my collection that I got from Cultural Resource Library, and it's about Fallout, and it's animated. And besides having a really wonderfully creepy soundtrack, there's snippets in here that are in the Beautiful World video. It's not from my particular film, because mine is black and white and scratched to hell. There's they got it from whatever source from the Civil Defense Department. But here it is, Fallout, When and How to Protect Yourself.
Attacks us with nuclear weapons, danger will come not just from blast or heat or nearby radiation effect, but also from fallout. Fallout which may occur miles and miles away from the blast. You need to know about fallout, what it is, how to detect it, and what to do to protect yourself against it. Everybody needs to know. Yes, this does mean you. Watch and listen. One day, these facts may save your life. What is this fallout, anyhow? Just bits of radioactive fall out of the mushroom cloud of the nuclear explosion and settle on the ground. These bits of matter can be dangerous. You're exposed to some radiation every day, from cosmic rays or other natural sources of radiation. These exposures are too small to hurt you. But when a wartime nuclear explosion occurs, a serious fallout follows. Thousands of tons of atomized earth, building materials, rocks, and gases may be thrown into the air. And the mushroom cloud containing them sometimes moves as high as 100,000 feet, nearly 20 miles up. Some of the radioactive particles spill out near the explosion site. Others may be carried for 10, 50, 100 miles or more. But how will you know if there is fallout? You can't hear, smell, taste, or see the radiation. But you yourself can detect the fallout particles that produce it. The easiest time to do this without special instruments is when the fallout is settling through the air. This starts any time from about 1/2 hour to several hours after the explosion, depending on how far away you are, and it continues to fall for an hour or longer. Usually you can see the fallout, so if there has been an explosion of a nuclear weapon within a few hundred miles of you, you should suspect every unusual concentration of dust in the air of being fallout. After an explosion in daylight, watch any unusual accumulation of dust. At night, put a white or light-colored plate outside. Examine it every 15 minutes or so. If dust has accumulated on the plate, treat it as fallout. The particles in that fallout behave like miniature X-ray machines, sending out radiation in all directions. If there are many particles, and if you are exposed to them long enough, you will be hurt. Others will be watching for that fallout, of course. Experts will estimate the probable path and speed of approaching fallout and try to keep you posted. But it may come before you hear any details by radio or otherwise. You must take precautions, whether you hear their reports or not. If radio stations are operating, you will hear reports, especially on the Conelrad frequencies 640 or 1240 on your AM dial. As soon as it is safe for specially protected crews to get out into the open, these highly trained civil defense radiation detection teams will make a thorough check of radiation levels and characteristics. Those facts will be relayed to you by radio as fast as they come into civil defense headquarters in your area. Information from the radiation monitoring teams will be combined and analyzed by experts manning a central radiation control point. These experts, who know just how fast harmful radiation reduces in force, can predict when it will be safe for people to come out of shelters and resume normal tasks. We have warned that you may have to act before you get any detailed reports. Just what can you do if fallout comes your way? Find the best shelter you can. The more solid substance you can put between yourself and the fallout, the better. But an ordinary frame house with windows closed will give considerable protection. In a house, it's best to get on the floor, away from doors and windows. Or if you can, find a location with additional walls in the center of the building. A basement is even better if the house has one. Large buildings, such as apartment or office buildings, give good protection. The thick, heavy masonry of their walls and floors makes it hard for radiation to get through. Basements, inside rooms, or corridors on the lower floors are safest. The basement of any house or building will become a good improvised shelter if you block the windows with sandbags and place other sandbags on the floor above the shelter area. If you don't have sandbags, thick, solid layers of books, magazines or newspapers, or even a series of file cabinets standing close to each other can cut the radiation danger. In some parts of the country, there are storm cellars or outside vegetable storage cellars. They may be used as shelters from fallout. If you plan to use such a cellar or your basement or any other shelter, stock it with food and supplies. To equip and supply your shelter area, you need some of the same things you might take on a vacation camping trip. First, sleeping equipment to fit your shelter area, folding cots, or sleeping bags and blankets. Then, food and water. There should be at least a 2-week supply. You'll want plenty of fruit juices and lots of your family's favorite canned foods. The drinking water supply should be rotated often to be sure it's fresh. And don't forget such basic needs as sugar, salt, pepper, and other seasoning that your family ordinarily uses. Now, some equipment. A radio is very important. It should be a battery portable with spare batteries. A transistorized radio is best, as the batteries last longer. Next, you need light in the form of flashlights and a battery-operated lantern. Then, a good first aid kit. Now, plates, cups, silverware. A can opener and a bottle opener are important. Add to these things enough closed containers to take care of garbage and human waste. Especially if there will be children in the shelter, include some books and magazines, paper and pencils, maybe one or two small, simple games. The best protection of all is the special shelter built according to specifications of your local civil defense organization. This has an air filter to allow ventilation, but keep dust out. And it has at least 3 feet of earth over it. It would be a good idea to go right now to your local civil defense office to secure plans for the type of shelter you want, and then to get busy on construction. Plans are simple, using standard materials. So maybe you can do the job yourself. But all this special shelter talk won't help very much if you are caught way out on the open road. If that happens, keep driving until you see a building, which may be a house or barn, church or school. Drive as close to the building as you can. Then get yourself and your family out of the car and take cover in the building. If you live on a farm and have sufficient warning, get your animals under cover and give them enough food and water to last several days. And if you can, cover any piles of hay or harvested crops that may be outside. If the explosion has been some miles away, you will have time to fill tubs and other containers with water before fallout arrives. All locations where outside dust does not penetrate will be safe storage points for water. Whatever kind of shelter you find, settle down and make the best of it. If there are others with you, help them by being as calm as you can, and don't be discouraged. You can go out for very brief periods if you are well covered and keep the dust off your skin. Wear heavy boots or shoes and pants tucked in or tied around the bottom to keep dust out. If any dust gets on you, brush it off promptly. And when you have a chance, wash it off. That dust can burn your skin. But what happens if you do get exposed to a great deal of fallout? Food or water has been contaminated by the dust, internal damage may occur. When dust has been left on skin, there will be skin burns. When you have been near dust too long, there may be radiation sickness. Exposure can even cause death. If you have had considerable exposure, you will vomit and grow weak. But after a few hours, this sensation will pass, and by the next day, you may have had the last of it. Even if you have been exposed to excessive fallout, you may eat and drink just as you normally would. But don't force yourself. Whether you have had these symptoms or not, if civil defense radio announcements have said that radiation has been high in your section, keep an eye on your condition for the next few days. Watch especially for these developments in the 2 weeks following exposure. Return of nausea, sore throat, bruise spots developing without any known reason, loss of hair. These conditions, or nosebleed, or diarrhea, should be reported to a doctor or to the nearest first aid station set up under civil defense plans. Unless civil defense teams have warned that your area is still dangerously radioactive, you can get out and work to help yourself and help others. Although fallout can be deadly, your chances of avoiding damage from it are much better if you follow the directions we have given you. During an alert, keep your portable radio tuned to the Conelrad radio frequencies, 640 and 1240 on the AM dial, for the latest reports and advice. Right now, today, before there is an alert, take time to learn the Civil Defense 5 steps to safety. Learn warning signals and what they mean. Learn your community plan for emergency action. Learn protection from radioactive fallout. Learn first aid and home emergency preparedness steps. And learn how to use Conelrad 640 or 1240 on the AM dial for official directions.
I love that film. And I have quite a few films on Fallout, probably 5 or 6 different ones, and about civil defense, what to do in case of an atomic attack type of stuff. But let me tell you, the expert on this is the guy who runs Conelrad.com and also is on Facebook, Conelrad. His name is Bill Gearhart, and he and I, over the years, have worked together, traded films, traded transfers, advice. He's a really great guy and really is on it as far as if you liked, wow, God. I'll talk about the need for coffee in a second. If you liked that film and you like other films like it, he did all this research and has all this information. He has a collection of songs about atomic attack. He has his Atomic Cafe. That's the film. Duh. I knew people who restored the film, and I had friends who worked on the film back in the day. But Bill Gearhart is really, he's amazing. And so check out Conelrad.com, or I think his Facebook Conelrad thing page is more up to date. Because he's always posting things, anniversaries of different things. He's been actively posting stills from films and movies that feature fallout shelter signs, and things along those projects. He's pretty great that way. So today I've just been told is International Coffee Day, so thank you, Kevin, and thank you for the recommendation of a local coffee place to get coffee. We try to support our local people whenever we can, and thank you, Geek Artist. So as a way to reward you / punish you for all the coffee and for it being International Coffee Day, I kind of quickly looked to see what films I had about coffee that were easily accessible. And this one is epic. And by epic, I mean, let's spend 30, 40 minutes learning about the history of coffee in Western culture via marionettes. This is Jerry Pulls the Strings, and we learn more than we ever wanted to know about coffee in Western culture. And so I'm saving this to the end. I totally understand if you tune out or tear your eyes out, but I wanted to show it, because there's probably no other time that's appropriate to show it than now. So let's watch Jerry Pulls the Strings, and hopefully I will see you, if I don't see you at the end of this, tomorrow, Wednesday, 1 o'clock. Join us. We'll have some good times, and we won't talk about coffee. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in today, and I hope you survive what you're about to watch. Jerry Pulls the Strings.
dear.
Of course, Dad, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Ah. It's marvelous.
Just wonderful.
So much vitality. So well rounded out.
So alive. So many-sided.
And it's mine.
He's mine. I can't believe it's possible.
What are you talking about?
Jerry. Jerry Spencer, of course.
Jerry? Well, I was talking about this blend of coffee we've just put out. It's simply...
Oh, you and your old coffee. That's all you ever talk about.
Well, coffee's my business, and I'm proud of it. And furthermore, young lady, I thought we'd finished with Jerry Spencer as a topic of conversation, or anything else.
Have we?
You know very well I gave him a chance to come into the coffee business with me, and he turned it down. The young scamp.
He's not a scamp.
He's a spoiled young fool. Thinks he can play all his life.
He's a very gifted young man. And I love him.
Why, at college, all he could think about was football, fencing, rowing. If I wanted to mean he ever graduated.
But he did. And was honest.
And now, this playing around with dolls at his age, why, it's absurd.
They're not dolls. They're puppets.
Dolls, puppets, it's all the same, and it's all foolish. Might be all right for you to putter around with, but for a grown man to waste his time...
I'm going to marry him.
I never consent to it, never, and that's final.
Jerry's coming here today to ask him.
Well, he'll have his trip for nothing. I gave orders he's not to be admitted.
And you better say yes. Because I did, and I mean it.
Jerry, I might have known it was you.
Doesn't it look like me? It was meant to. I made one of Donna, too. See? And are those two puppets crazy about each other? Look. I'll show you.
And I say no.
There. Now see what you've done.
Jerry, you're incorrigible. How did you get in here, anyway?
Oh, I just,
You think that coffee is a dull dollar and cents business, but you're wrong. Don't you suppose there's beauty and romance and adventure in coffee? Yes, and literature and history, too. Somebody to take life seriously.
But I am serious. I love Donna, Mr. Atwell, and she loves me. And I'm sure I could make her happy.
Sure. By playing around with dolls, I suppose. Son, why don't you ever grow up? Forget all this nonsense. I like you. You know that. Come into my business with me. Oh, I know.
I promised Donna I would.
And I promised her you wouldn't. Jerry, you've no right to turn my girl's head unless...
Strange.
Now stop wasting my time.
Mr. Atwell. I had to get in.
Mankind has been told in the coffee houses of the world. You learn that story and how to tell it to the world, and you'll soon forget this make-believe play.
You want to tell the story of coffee, Mr. Atwell? Tell it so people will really appreciate what it's meant to mankind? Is that what you want to do?
That's exactly what I want to do. There's inspiration in the story of coffee, and the world should know the story and understand it.
And if I help you tell that story, tell it in a more fascinating way than it's ever been told before, will you agree that I'm doing important enough work to let me marry Donna?
Agree? Why, I'll be the happiest man alive.
Very well. I'll come into your business.
You will, Jerry? Fine, fine. I knew you would.
And I'll bring my puppets with me.
You'll what? Now, look here, Jerry. My office is in the nursery. You can play around with those things on the outside, but...
But, Mr. Atwell, you don't understand.
I understand there's no place in my business for puppets.
Oh, but there's a place for the puppets, sir. Why, they're going to tell the story of coffee so that millions of people, children and grown-ups, will listen and enjoy it.
Jerry, this is your idea of humor.
I was never more serious in my life, Mr. Atwell. I mean it. Look, give me a month. Just 1 month's time to get ready. Then I'll come into your office with my puppet. And when we're finished, if you don't agree that the puppets have earned their right to stay, well, I'll never take another puppet in my hand again as long as I live.
Puppets to tell the story of coffee. Why, it's silly.
Just 1 month's time, Mr. Atwell. Is it a bargain?
Oh, I suppose so.
Well, here goes, darling. Wish me luck.
Lots of it, darling.
See if he's ready.
Okay.
Give it some music.
Y los pájaros pintos cantan o les apachurro al nido.
Hello! Hello!
Hello. Are you Mr. Prado?
Alvarado quiere un bizcocho. Alvarado quiere un bizcocho.
I'm sorry. I don't understand Spanish. Mr. Atwell said...
And Alvarado, my parrot, does not understand English. That makes you even, eh? Oh, you say Atwell? Senor Matthew Atwell?
Yes. He's my father-in-law. That is, he will be. I'm Jerry Spencer.
Miguel Ricardo Don Santos Prado at your service. Please to sit down.
I'm down here on a visit. Mr. Atwell said to be sure to see you.
Senor Atwell buys much coffee from me. Please to sit down.
He said you know more about coffee than any grower in the country. That you could teach me a lot.
Matthew is very kind. We begin to teach you now. Lesson number 1. South America is a very polite country. When we have guests, if guests stand, we stand. Miguel Ricardo dos Santos Prado is very, very tired. Please, Jerry Spencer, to sit down.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
Lesson number 1 is finished. So, you wish to know something about coffee, eh?
Yes, sir. Mr. Atwell said there's beauty and romance and adventure in the story of coffee. And literature and history, too.
The story of coffee, eh? It is well, Jerry Spencer. So we come now to lesson number 2. The story of coffee. You have not heard how coffee is discovered? There are many legends. But this one I like very much. There was once a time when no one knew about coffee. It is hard to think of such a time, no? Must be a very, very sad world then. Well, at such a time in Arabia, there was a young fellow named...
Caldi!
Caldi, see, who sat under a tree all day and watched a small bunch of goats. Oh, it was very unexciting until one day...
herd, as you can see, I tend my goats most patiently, but I'm as bored as I can be, for goats are such dull company. This ungoat-like prancing, how can I such conduct explain? For if mine own eyes see you dancing, by the beard of the prophet, I'm not sane.
Do the cherries,
Do the cherries, do the cherries, do the cherries,
up on the coffee tree.
up on the coffee tree.
I ate them,
We ate them, we ate them,
and oh, they made me happy as can be.
and me, and me, and me, and me, and me. They made us feel so happy that we danced about in glee.
Coffee cherries?
The coffee cherries.
It seems incredible, but maybe it's true. I'll try them myself. I'm feeling so blue. They may do for me what they've done for you. It's true. It's true.
It's true. It's true. He ate coffee cherries and it's true. It's true. It's true. He ate coffee cherries and it's true. He ate coffee cherries upon the coffee tree. He ate coffee cherries. It's true as you can see. It's true. It's true. It's true. He ate the coffee cherries and it's true. It's true. It's true. It's true. It's true. He ate the coffee cherries and it's true.
This is just a story, you understand. Coffee cherries do not have as much power as that.
And how well Caldy and his goats dance, too.
There is much dancing in the history of coffee. In the coffee houses of Constantinople were told the stories of Arabian Nights, stories of Scheherazade. In the ballet of Scheherazade, there is a dance of the prince and princess. beautiful, no?
Boy, talk about poetry in motion.
Poetry? He's a poetry in coffee, too. There was a time when coffee houses were like clubs, where big poets and writers came like Oliver Goldsmith and Samuel Johnson, and people of the theater like David Garrick and the great actress Mrs. Siddons, and other people listened while they talked. Ah, it must have been great times to sit around the big table, drink coffee, and see great men and hear stories which the whole world would hear one day.
And would you believe it, my dear fellow, he did not know me.
But did you tell him you were the great actor David Garrick?
I bade him look upon me. There was no need for taking my name in vain.
Here comes Dr. Johnson.
Johnson. It's Samuel Johnson. Here comes Sam Johnson.
And Boswell, as usual, at his heels.
Gentlemen. Gentlemen. How do you do? My dear Oliver Goldsmith, I ask pardon for my tardiness. In truth, young Boswell here is much too good a listener. I had no mind of the time.
Your apologies, my dear Johnson, fall on ears unheeding. I've scarce noticed your absence, what with sipping coffee, so delicious, to say nothing of a free seat at a performance of the great Garrick yonder.
And David is a pretty lad. 'Tis sad that where such beauty reigns, seems not a welcome place for brains. Pray make no note of that, Boswell. The rhyme's not bad, but the meter's faulty. I went my coffee. Didst think I came to...
You come to be listened to, I'll be bound. Coffee may please you, but talk's your bread and meat.
You're a pert miss.
Away with you. 'Tis the ears on your cup that'll listen to your talk, not mine.
Egad, I think I'll give that to posterity.
Mrs. Siddons.
The actress. Siddons? What does she hear?
Gentlemen. Gentlemen.
Ah, my dear Mrs. Siddons, you do me too much honor to seek me out here.
Samuel Johnson, you promised me a play. You will not escape me in a coffee house. Siddons is no disdainer of coffee. Have me a cup and a chair.
Aye, wench, coffee for the lady. And as for a chair, surely a seat not fit for greatness and beauty, but 'twill be a throne if you do sit upon it.
I'm afraid you're as flattering to this hardwood bench as to me. I trust you may be as flattering to the coffee. That is, when it comes.
What's this? No coffee? I went. Coffee for my lady. Hurry, hurry, coffee.
I'm coming.
Here, let me have it. Egad, my lady. The poor girl has fallen before so much greatness and loveliness all in one person. Was too much for her.
La, Mr. Johnson.
There was lots of history in coffee houses, too. The French Revolution began in a coffee house. The American Revolution had lots of plans made for it in coffee houses. On the night of April 18th, 1775, the ride of Paul Revere was perhaps being planned in the Green Dragon Coffee House in Boston. James Otis was there, John Adams, and a young friend of Paul Revere. They talked very quietly about the coming of British soldiers. Ah, senor, it was a very, very bad time.
Gentlemen, I have asked Paul Revere to meet us here tonight. I've had news. 2 brigades of redcoats have been ordered to move against us at once.
When, Mr. Adams?
That I don't know, Mr. Otis, nor by what road. But the situation is desperate. We must resist now or never.
You have no question of which it will be.
None. The Minutemen have settled that. But we've got to know when they'll strike and where. We haven't a chance otherwise.
I wish young Revere would get here.
He'll be here, Mr. Otis. He promised to meet me here by 10 o'clock at the latest. Here he is now.
It's Paul. I'll let him in. Paul! Thank heaven you've arrived.
What have you learned?
Not enough, but this much. They're ready to march tonight.
How will they come?
I haven't yet learned. Their ship, the Somerset, is still anchored in the bay and no sign of activity. They may come by land.
We've got to know. 'Twould be suicide to try to stop them unprepared.
We will know. And you shall help me.
I'm ready. Where do we go?
You go to the tower of Old North Church. It commands a view of the barracks. Watch carefully. Have 2 lanterns with you in the belfry arch of the tower. When you see which way they are to come, hang out a signal light. 1 lantern if they come by land, 2 if they leave by sea.
But, Paul, what good will that do? There still will not be time.
My horse and I will be on the other shore ready to start the moment I see the light. I will arouse the countryside if I have to call on the crack of doom to help me. I'm off. Wish me luck.
With thy blessing, O Lord.
So, Jerry Spencer, coffee and coffee houses played a big part in the history of the whole world. And so we finish lesson number 2. And tomorrow we start lesson number 3, how coffee is grown. Dios mío, Alvarado say it will be tomorrow pretty quick. It is long past time for bed. Come, Jerry Spencer, mi amigo. We will leave the story of coffee until tomorrow. Now the house is this way. Come.
I think he liked it.
Gee, I hope so. Shall I ask him?
No, don't, Jerry. He'd never say yes if you ask him.
Is the show all over?
Haven't you had enough?
Well, it just didn't seem very long,
Then
and I
you
thought...
liked it.
Now, see here, young lady, I'm not saying I did, and I'm not saying I didn't. I just wanted to know if that was all.
No, there's more. I still have to learn how coffee is grown, you know. I'm sure Don Miguel wouldn't be satisfied unless I learned it thoroughly.
Yes, that's right. Quite a character, isn't he?
How'd you like to meet Don Miguel? As a puppet, I mean.
Could I? Is that permitted?
Hey there, Miguel.
Is somebody calling Miguel? It is not tomorrow yet, Jerry Spencer.
I'm sorry, Miguel. I just wanted you to meet an old friend of yours. This is Mr. Matthew Atwell, remember? He's going to be my father-in-law. I hope.
What is this hope? It is not enough for Miguel to hope. Miguel must know. When you say, here is Matthew Atwell, he is my father-in-law, then he can disturb my slumber. Till then, Miguel must sleep. And you, Jerry Spencer, I will see you tomorrow.
Funny little fellow, isn't he? When shall it be tomorrow? In Puppet Land, I mean.
Right now, if you wish.
Okay, go right ahead. Well, what are we waiting for?
Well, Jerry Spencer, we start lesson number 3, how coffee is grown. Here is the fazenda of Miguel Ricardo dos Santos Prado, what you would call a coffee plantation. Now here, there are 1 million trees.
1 million?
Oh, you think it is many? Some fazendas have 50, 60 million trees.
Gosh, why, it doesn't seem possible.
Yet there is not one tree planted here where they are grown. Here, see on these carts are small trees from the nursery where they were grown maybe 1 year till it is maybe 18 inches high. See? Then, if it is a good tree, it is transplanted here like these in the orchard.
Then how soon does it bear fruit?
Coffee cherries appear on the trees in 3 or 4 years.
You mean you leave them alone for 3 or 4 years before you start picking?
Leave them alone? They are raised like babies. There must be no weeds. There must be all strong branches. There must not be too much sun. It takes lots of people lots of time till the trees produce, and cherries can be picked like these.
So this is how coffee beans are picked.
It is not a bean. It is a cherry.
Cherry? Well, I thought you called them that as, well, sort of a grower's name.
Oh, no. It is a cherry. Wait. See? Inside the cherry is the coffee bean.
Uh-huh. I see. There's a bean in every cherry, is that it? Well, sort of like the cherry pit.
There are 2 beans in each cherry. Here, I'll open it and show you.
But that cherry isn't ripe yet, is it?
It is ripe. If it is not ripe, it is not picked.
Well, there are still flowers on that tree. How can there be ripe fruit on it?
Oh, it is sometimes so. Here is a flower, a green cherry, a ripe cherry, and they are all on the same tree. Pickers must pick only cherries that are ripe. To pick a whole tree takes maybe, 6 months. See?
Then what happens to the ripe cherries?
Well, in a vat, the cherries are soaked in water until they get soft. The soft cherries go in a big machine where they are squeezed a little bit, and the coffee bean comes out the poop, like that. The coffee bean is washed clean. Then it is dried in a big open place in the sun. Now go this way over there and you will see. I will come in 4 or 5 minutes.
Cuidado, señor. No pise sobre los granos de café.
Speaking to me, mister?
Tonto idiota, le dije que no pise sobre los granos de café. Anda, fuera de aquí, anda, fuera. ¿Qué le pasa?
Oh, what is happening here?
Perdóname, señor Miguel, pero le dije al americano que no pisara sobre los granos de café y no puso nada de atención. Quería pisar sobre los granos.
What's it all about anyway?
He says to you, do not walk on the coffee. And right away you walk. It made him angry.
And I thought he was calling to me. Sorry, mister.
Bueno, muy bien. Adiós.
Now, Jerry, over here we continue our lesson. Now you see, here the beans are dried. They must be turned over many, many times in the sun. It takes maybe 4, 6, or 8 days.
And when the beans are dry, then are they ready for market?
No, they are not quite ready yet. For, you see, the bean still has a coat like parchment. See? In the warehouse, it goes into a big machine where it is rubbed, and the parchment coat falls off. After this, the coffee must be cleaned, sorted, and in size and in grade. Then it is packed and is ready for market. So, Jerry Spencer, we finish lesson number 3, how coffee is grown. Now, in different places, it is grown different ways. It is picked different ways. It is dry, clean, sorted different ways. But in all ways, coffee makes lots of people happy. And it will make you happy too, I think.
Well, I hope so. It's certainly given me a pleasant visit here with you. What's that?
Oh, that is the whistle of the riverboat, which tomorrow is to take you to Big Boat, which will take you home. You will like that, eh?
Yes. But I'm going to miss you a lot, Miguel. Well, it's been marvelous, and someday soon I'm expecting to see you in New York.
Oh, someday I will come. But when one leaves with coffee all of one's lifetime, he sees all of the world. For in all of the world is coffee. Adios, mi amigo.
Well, that's that. Show's over, darling.
And a grand show it was, too.
The only question is, does your father think so?
Does that look like it? I'm going to ask him.
No, wait.
Matthew Atwell.
Hello, Miguel. I didn't know you came back with Jerry.
I had to come back. I have to learn the lesson number 4.
Lesson number 4?
That is right. Number 1, 2, 3, Jerry has learned from Miguel. Lesson number 4, Miguel must learn from Matthew Atwell.
Yes, of course. But what is lesson number 4?
How coffee is blended, roasted, and packed. You will show Miguel, no?
I will show Miguel, yes, by all means. Come on, Will.
May we come too, Mr. Atwell?
Yes, Daddy, please.
Eh, what? Hello, you two. For a minute, I thought it was... now, run along, you two. The plant's out that way. Come on, Miguel. Let's go. You sit there, Miguel. You'll be comfortable there. Here we have green coffee just as it comes from the ship. And I do believe, Miguel, that this bag is from your plantation.
If it is my coffee, it is very good coffee.
It's excellent coffee, Miguel, and is used in some of our choicest blends. You see, there's green coffee here from a great many parts of the world. For practically all the coffee you drink is blended, and that means that it's made out of several different varieties of coffee.
The coffee is roasted before it's blended, isn't it, Mr. Atwell?
Oh, no, Jerry.
Please do not interrupt. This is lesson number 4, and it will be taught by Matthew Atwell. Senorita Donna, Senor Jerry will listen.
No, Donna's right, Jerry. The coffee is blended first, right in there. Green coffee starts on its last journey from this large storage room, where it is brought directly from the dock warehouse. And there it goes into the green coffee chute. Down this chute go the bags of coffee that go to make a full blend. A bag of this variety, 3 bags of another, 2 bags of a third, whatever the blend may be. Down the chute into a huge mixer and cleaner to get rid of any dust that the coffee may have picked up in its long journey. Thoroughly mixed and cleaned, it comes up this conveyor to the receiving hopper at the top of the roaster, where an automatic scale weighs out just the required amount for each roasting. When the roaster is ready for a new batch of green coffee, the operator or roaster man releases the green coffee in the hopper above, and here it is pouring down in a green stream into this huge drum-like oven. The roasting process lasts from 15 to 18 minutes, depending on the type of coffee. The coffee beans are continually tossed around the heating unit so that each bean is evenly roasted. While the roasting is nearing completion, it is carefully examined by an expert operator. This large cooling bin flips up the spill chute, and there you have the roasted coffee in the well-known brown coffee bean. Now I want to show you what roasting does to coffee. See here. Now, here's what that bean looked like when it was green. The roasting process brings out all the delicate flavor-giving qualities in the coffee bean, the fragrant elements that give coffee its distinctive flavor. The coffee beans expand. Aromatic vapors are released. The bean, as you see, is literally blown up to more than twice its green size, with all the flavor and aroma of the coffee imprisoned inside. Keeping this goodness which has been created fresh is part of the coffee packer's problem, because the moment air comes in contact with the coffee beans, they start to lose their strength. And if air continues to reach them, they eventually become stale and flat. In a little while you'll see how we've solved that problem. By packing this coffee within a very short time after it's roasted and ground in vacuum cans. Cans, that is, from which the air has been removed, and so preserve the freshness of the coffee until it's opened in the home. And now, over there, the coffee is cooling and ready for grinding. Here it is going into a huge bin after it passes into this grinder. Before grinding, the coffee goes through ingenious cleansing mechanisms that remove every particle of foreign matter and leave only the pure coffee that pours down this chute into the packing department on the floor below. And here comes the coffee to its last operation, weighing and packing in vacuum cans. No hands touch either can or coffee from the time the can starts its journey until it's filled, sealed, and ready for packing in cases. There go the cans, each filled with exactly the right amount of freshly ground coffee. Then out they go to make room for another batch of 4 cans, while the filled cans pass on to a clincher where the cover is loosely attached. And right here comes the very important contribution of modern science to the enjoyment of coffee: packing in vacuum cans. After the covers are put on, the can enters this chamber, and just before the cover is hermetically sealed onto the filled can, an ingenious suction device draws the air out of the can, leaving the freshly roasted coffee surrounded only by its own elements, and no air to rob it of its flavor and aroma. So here we come to the end of the coffee packing story, the end of lesson number 4, Miguel, with freshly roasted coffee still retaining all its delicious quality in a can that keeps it that way. Here, let me show you. Here it is, the perfect container for good coffee. Why, where have Don and Jerry gone?
Maybe they have gone back to the office. I think maybe Jerry Spencer wonders if Matthew Atwell thinks he is good enough to be his son-in-law.
Good enough? Why, I think he's... I'll soon tell him whether I think he's good enough. I suppose I have been a bit of a fool about all this, but I did it because I loved it.
Wow, you guys are still holding on. That's amazing. Really, yikes, epic. This is made before World War II, 1938. So this is when there was a lot of advertising dollars to be spent. This isn't even by a coffee company. This is made by the American Can Company, who had, I guess, the process to vacuum seal coffee and other products. And so this is really not an ad for coffee as much as it is an ad for vacuum sealed coffee containers. But it's also a love story. And true love found its way. Dad figured it out. That Jerry is not just obsessed with toys and dolls, that he truly does understand the process of how coffee came to our culture, and then we get to find out about the manufacturing process at the end. But this is also, besides big advertising budgets, this is also when attention spans were much, much, much bigger. This is before television. And so they could have knocked that one out in 10 minutes nowadays, or even 5. Or even 20 seconds. I don't know how long TikTok is, but you can probably just have a puppet explaining things, and then they show the process while it's the puppet is talking. But thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for the coffee. This is a way you can reward AV Geeks, even though we punish you repeatedly by showing you these films. And another way is you can say like, or you can subscribe, or I don't know, all the little weird things that you can do virtually. But we'll be back tomorrow, and we'll see you soon. As always, click. Please rewind and love each other, and we will see you on Wednesday. Take care. Bye.